Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help. And you know what? It really does matter. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second half, shall we? Today's first encounter. I'd like to preface this by saying I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me on my grandparents' land. It's 75 acres of horror, if you're not used to it. I grew up there, so a lot of this didn't faze me. So if my reactions are odd, it's because this is my life and I'm kind of desensitized. So I was 17 years old. I was driving from my dad's house on the aforementioned land. Pretty late, I think it was around 11 or so. I had dropped someone off at my dad's house and was driving back into town to get back to my mom's house. As I was driving down our long driveway, I kept seeing things moving in the field. I didn't pay any attention, probably a rabbit or something. Things moving in the grass are normal. I get to the end of the road and I see this someone in a ditch just lying there. Me being a girl in a raggedy old car at a place with piss poor signal in the middle of the night with no weapon on me, I floor it. I don't care. I figured I'd get a call from my dad later to take care of the possible drunk in the ditch. I'm driving down the road. The memory of the ditch person creeped me out. I got this awful feeling of being watched. I'm traveling down the road nearly at 60 miles an hour with no signal whatsoever. Maybe I was overreacting, whatever. I still sped up because I wanted to get a signal and call my boyfriend because it would make me feel safer. Then I see something running alongside my car. Well, I say running, it was more like skittering, lanky limbs on all fours running and keeping up with me going 60 down a country logging road. I think my brain kind of had this aneurysm at this point because I was just repeating myself, WTF, WTF. I'm getting closer to civilization though, so I floor it. Get up to about 80 and leave it behind. I call my boyfriend, freaked out about what I had seen. I pull over at a little church with a light out in front, trying to make some logic out of this, when I saw the thing again. It's on the road, skittering toward my parked car. Before I have time to pull out of the lot, it's on me, hitting my car hard enough to dent the rear bumper. I scream, squealing out of the lot and driving like a maniac towards town. I get into town and circle around the main areas a few times, calming down before I go to my mom's. Further description of this thing. It was weirdly flat, like someone trying to do a back bend, but not bending. Its limbs were long and spindly, with pale skin stretched too tight across its bones. Today's second encounter. I'd like to share a few of my experiences that I've had in the past. I am from Europe, and all of my experiences have happened here. Some are older, while some are quite fresh. With that being said, I'm not quite sure if all of my encounters are connected with crawlers, or whatever you guys call them, but I've seen and heard many strange things throughout my life. I've tried to share some of my experiences with some friends, and they all just think I'm crazy. I was about 12 years old when this happened. I'm 24 now. I spent the summertime with my brother and my cousin at my grandmother's house. I've always hated that place. The old ruined buildings, the backyard covered with dense vegetation and animal remains, made the whole thing even worse. Not to mention, we've always been scared to go outside after sunset because we tend to hear strange noises outside, and the light barely hits the end of the backyard. On that night, my cousin woke us up and ordered us to grab our slippers and let's go outside because he needed to use the toilet badly. The thing is that in my grandmother's house, there was no toilet inside. The only toilet we could use was an old, small toilet at the end of our backyard in a small, ruined building, close to the other ruins. This usually forced us to drink and eat carefully before the night because going outside alone in the dark as a child was a creepy journey, and we already experienced many things before. We tried to convince him to come on, try and hold it for a couple hours, when the sun slowly starts to shine upon the yard at least, but he told us to screw off, that he had to go, he couldn't wait. We didn't have too much choice anyway, so we prepared fast and he led the way. Of course, the only girl had to go first, definitely for courtesy purposes, huh? We left the house. He ran inside the building, which lay far from the main house, where we actually abstained. Me and my brother stood guard. The moon was bright, so keep that in mind, and out of fear, I laid my eyes on it and tried to enjoy the sight of the illusionary safeness it gave me for a short period. Suddenly, I heard the neighbor's dog barking, screaming, shrieking like hell. The sound of this dog was a mix of dread, confusion, and pain, like if he had actually been beaten or something. I had no clue what was going on. I knew for that reason the neighbor kept his dog closed inside a safe building before the dark fell, but the door was actually a door of a fence, so he could always see the yard. The yard where he tended to stay was also closed off. This dog never really barked at night, at all, and even if he did sometimes, it was never like this. I can safely say that I've never heard such a noise come from a dog before. We both stared at that direction where the dog was, trying to figure out what was happening, but the ruined buildings covered the scene. We waited. We didn't dare move closer, neither, so we kept just staring in the dark. When the barking suddenly stopped, something terrible fear sat upon us. Dead silent moments which actually followed us till the end of the encounter, when I noticed the reason for the terrible crying. A pale-skinned, eerily thin creature appeared before us from about 15 to 20 meters away. It was walking on all fours in a way I've never seen any other being walk before. It was hunched over, and its limbs were just too long to fit its torso. He was hairless, bald, his eyes did not shine, but when he turned his head towards us, the lamp behind us made its eyes glow. When he noticed my brother and I, he froze for seconds, but then the creature started to move its head, twisting and turning. Its movements gave me a sense that it was actually trying to observe us from far away and deciding what to do. Its body also moved strangely. Sometimes it raised its whole torso, and its long and thin arms left the ground. Sometimes it leaned back on all fours. As it stared at us, my brother also started to cry and asked, "What the hell is that?" I heard it made a step behind me, but I did not dare run. Both me and my brother were paralyzed by its appearance and the look of the creature. I knew that my cousin can finish his business any time, and if he comes out, he'll face the creature, so I tried to raise my voice. "Hey, something's out here." At that point, I didn't care too much about the creature. He had already spotted us anyway. I felt how its eyes were focused on me after that warning. I just felt it. I can't really describe the feeling. Everything was dead silent around us. No birds, crickets, dogs, nothing. I tried to calculate what to do, but I realized that the house was too far from us. So even if we tried to flee, the creature could reach us easily if that would be its purpose, and our cousin would still be in the outhouse. I'm not quite sure how long we stared at each other. Honestly, I have no clue. It felt like a long time, but then it turned its body, gave us a final gaze, with its head raised, then fled from a different direction. The reed fence which separated my grandmother's plot and the other neighbor's was about 10 feet tall, and I swear to God this creature jumped over it with one single jump. That night keeps haunting me and brings me old questions again and again. I am still not satisfied with the answers I got, and I don't know why that creature left us alive. Long years after this, I still ask my brother about this encounter sometimes to convince myself that I am not crazy. Not like the time would wash away the truth. I ask him if he still remembers that night. He always answers in a low tone with a yes, and we never talk about it any further. My next experience happened in the same town where I had that encounter with the pale creature. I was sleeping in my other grandma's house, which is located at the very end of the town. Literally, it was actually the last street, which led out to the wilderness towards the forest and fields. I kept my window open because in the summer at night, a little fresh, cold air is always a big help when you're trying to fall asleep. Only the shutter covered the window a little bit, just in case, not wanting people to peek inside. In the middle of the night, I was dragged out of my dreams by a terrible voice I had never heard before. I cannot describe it perfectly. Sometimes it sounded like a mixture of several creatures, but it wasn't perfectly similar to anything I'd know. It was kind of static, if that makes sense. It was sometimes like a screeching, hissing, clittering, moaning, and what freaked me out the most, that sometimes I managed to hear a human voice between those strange, nightmarish sounds, but definitely coming from the very same source. A deep, human voice, which wasn't right either at all. It just was not natural. I can't make out what it was actually trying to say, but it often repeated the same sentence, then the strange sounds came again. Like if whatever was outside was trying to mock me. I lied in my bed and squeezing my hands on my mouth to try and not make a sound. Tears started to flow down my cheeks. Not just the sounds. I've seen and heard many scary things before, but the vibe, the atmosphere, made this situation even more worse. I felt like a caged animal who was startled by a hungry predator, ready to break in, and I think it was actually the case because I spent a lot of time in that house and I've heard a lot of people walking before the house in different times of the day and night, so I can make out two things. Two things. The source of the voice is looking at my direction before my window, and the second is that is at least 8 feet tall to be able to make these sounds from that high because the house has a higher built base. It felt like an eternity, and I realized that my dog is silent. Normally, he barks at everyone who is approaching the house. He is very overprotective, big staffy, but on that night, he went dead silent, and I didn't hear any other sounds coming from outside, like other dogs barking, which was, well, a huge problem on that part of town, unlike on the other. And I surely started to fear that he had gotten attacked or killed by this something. By how the voice changed before it went completely silent suddenly, I can say almost after it left my window, this thing turned around and took its way down a narrow, ruined road, back to the endless forest and fields to vanish into the dark. My last experience that I want to share happened close to that town, maybe 20 kilometers distance, where I experienced those two things I've mentioned above. In the edge of a city surrounded by woods, wilderness, and also from a different direction, endless cornfields embraced by more woods, of course. I was outside in the dark, walking with my dog. For some reason, I preferred to walk my dog after sunset because the roads were empty and everything was silent, so I can be alone. I almost reached the park when something terrible hit me, and I recognized that everything went dead silent. No birds chirping, no dogs barking, no crickets or any kind of bug. No bats, nothing. I immediately felt like someone or something was watching me, and before I'd take my gaze toward the direction from where I felt this, the most toward the park, the pale lights around that area burned out completely. Everything went black. My dog stopped moving and sniffing around, and stared in the pitch black before me. Suddenly, I started to hear this strange noise coming from the dark, somewhere above, probably from the top of the tree. I had the similar vibe what I've got in my second story. This just happened 8 months ago. Static murmuring, chittering noises starting to come from the dark. I tried to see the source, but I cannot. There was no light at all. So if that would be a creature, the lights couldn't make its eyes glow because there was none. I didn't have to push my dog to go back. He literally started to run back to the house, and I kept looking back in that direction while that terrible feeling of being watched, literally eaten alive by eyes, kept torturing me. I actually had some other scary and strange experiences around this place with strange figures and feelings. After this experience, my dog absolutely refuses to go near that park at night. Honestly, I don't know what to think about these. I've heard about crawlers about a year ago. Maybe some of these experiences are actually connected to them. I don't know. That they are not always transformed and mimicking humans or different animals, despite that they can do that. The deeper I dig into the topic, the more questions I have about my own experience. And since then, I try to keep my eyes and ears more open and try to be alert. All right, guys, so that last one was from somewhere in Europe. I just wanted to let you guys know that they did state that in the beginning. It was kind of a bumpy ride reading it because of how they worded everything. They did a pretty good job, actually. I've read a couple of different encounters from European people, and this one was actually pretty well written, so I apologize for the bumpiness in that. On to the final encounter of the evening. Back in 2020, I moved to Doylestown, Pennsylvania to be near my son and grandchildren. I found a small cabin, like apartment in Bucks County. I lived near farms and woods. I signed my lease on August 6th. On the evening of August 7th, 2020, my son and I came to the apartment to move some stuff in. We're both standing at the rear of his truck in the driveway when we both turned around, not because we heard something, but we just happened to do so. We noticed a black, odd-looking creature creeping at the end of the driveway, trying to go past us in the direction of the farm across from my cabin. I quickly turned around and it was gone. We both agreed that it did not look like a dog or a coyote. We finished unloading that evening and I was constantly asking him what his thoughts were on that creature. He said he didn't know, but it was weird looking. I wrote it down because that's what I do. 7 months later, on March 1st, 2021, it was a cold and windy early morning. I'd put the trash out hours before and was just working on the computer. I heard a loud bang, and right away I knew it was my trash can, so I put on my jacket and shoes and grabbed a flashlight. It was a little after 3 in the morning. The reason I grabbed my flashlight because it's still pretty dark in the front. There's wildlife in the area because of the woods and farmland. When walking on my driveway to the road, you can't see them all that well unless there's a full moon. As I got down to the trash can and started pulling the can up from the ground, I heard a car horn blowing and the sound of someone slamming their brakes on. As I looked toward the stop sign, I saw a black figure in the lights of the car, standing in the middle of the road. It dropped to all fours and started heading back to my direction. I noticed the guy standing in the road. Within seconds, the creature had reached my driveway. It noticed my flashlight and stood on 2 legs, boxing its front paws and growling. It sounded like a snore. It had yellow eyes and stood over 6 foot tall. It had black, spiked hair and drool dripping from its mouth. Suddenly, the car peeled wheels and made a left turn towards my driveway. The creature dropped on all fours and was gone. In a blink, the car stopped in front of the driveway and the guy yelled out, "WTF was that?" He then proceeded down my road. I was walking backwards, shaking nervously toward my front door. I got inside, found myself still upset and shaking my head. I stood at the door with the outside light on and waited for the car to return. After a few moments, the car blew by my driveway and proceeded the original way he had headed when he had encountered this creature. The creature looked like it was something on steroids from a horror movie. I know what I saw. I don't drink and I don't do drugs. I take care of my wife, who had suffered a massive heart attack and has dementia. I haven't seen this creature since then. When I sit outside at night now, I am packed with 2 guns. I've researched this and found nothing, but I continue looking in case something pops up. I hope I never see this creature again. I still think about when I go outside at night to sit and relax. You may find this crazy, but my background is that I worked for the police and fire department in Baltimore County, Sparrows Point Place, police, high-tech security, private bodyguard, bank security, Baltimore Blast Soccer security, and Pinkerton security. I believe that this may have actually been an upright canine incident. I am going to discuss this event in more detail with the witness, and we'll follow up later. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed part 2 of today's upload. With that, I want to thank you all for all of your support, and may the Great Spirit watch over us, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.